Welcome back to R. Steven. Currently mulling over hiring a hit squad to take out my microwave speaker, and today, from someone using common sense to another person making the most of a job offering more pay for bilingual employees, we've got some great malicious compliance stories, all starting with a post titled, "If you don't like the way I eat, I simply won't." My parents are very weird people. A lot of very small random things set them off, and they will seethe about them for hours, call me names, threaten to take away things from me, threaten to kick me out, etc. They also don't believe in most mental health issues and diagnoses. Either I get a therapist and magically get better, or it's a waste of money. Meds or anything else? Out of the question. One of their biggest pet peeves is how I eat. I call myself a grazer. For example, I like to have small, light meals throughout the day. Heavy meals, or meals rich in dairy, acidity, or fats, make me feel very nauseous, as well as eating too fast. I'm also never really hungry or ravenous. Sometimes I just feel a bit dizzy, so I eat to feel better. This leads to me, when going out for dinner or taking portions of homemade meals, to either take home leftovers or packing up my portions for the next day. I'd like to clear the air. I don't waste my food, it always gets eaten just on my terms, and within a reasonable time of a day or so. My friends and relatives do not see an issue with this. My mother and stepfather, my stepfather especially, do. 2 weeks ago, he screamed at me because I didn't finish my food and took it home for next day's lunch, which I did eat at work. He was raging about how it wasn't how you were supposed to eat food. That even though I always ate my leftovers, I was wasting his money because the food wasn't fresh when I ate it. And he hates having to buy me food and told me, stop asking for food when we go out, he won't pay for it anymore. He also called me several flavorful names while my spineless mom just sat there. My poor baby brother found me that night and apologized on their behalf, saying, he didn't know why they were like this, so rude to you. Game on then. Since that night, whenever my family and I go out to eat, I don't get a single thing. If I bring my wallet, I make it a point to order by myself and order a small meal. At home, I take very little portions, no more leftovers. At first, my dad refused to say anything, but now him and my mom are both throwing around anorexia and EDs. I'm 5'4", 130 pounds, with a body fat percentage of 24%, perfectly healthy even by my primary doctor's standards. They're furious now, saying I'm making them look abusive when we go out and that I'm being an immature B-word. I just point out that I'm just doing what they asked, which usually gets them to leave it alone. I have my own car, and as I mentioned before, my own job that thankfully pays well. I'm not starving by any means, just making a point to take none of the food they offer now, outside or homemade. So I think it's definitely going to vary depending on the person, but I feel in general food is one of those things that you really need to be careful about being judgmental about so outwardly to other people. Growing up, I had people around me that kind of said the opposite of what OP experienced, where they would say, wow, are you going to eat all that? Wow, that's a big portion, huh? Do you need all that? And because I experienced that and heard those things when I was a kid, I still have a bit of a condition where I don't like to prepare food in front of other people. My mind goes to, I'm going to be judged, I'm going to be ridiculed, they're going to think less of me because I'm eating a single frozen Red Baron mini pizza. OP's parents just straight up don't sound like very mature people to me. But a very mature and upstanding thing you could do would be to hit those like and subscribe buttons down below to help support more videos like this. Our next story is Security Starts with S, but begins with U. Not my story, but needed to share. A friend of mine is the GM for a manufacturing facility, and he reports up to the corporate level. The corporate VP of operations was a big stickler about following the rules, especially related to security. This isn't a bad thing, but he would often try to set up chances to catch employees in security violations for write-ups. Things like holding open the exterior door for an employee so the following person didn't have to badge in. My GM friend gave his notice recently, and one of the things the VP demanded was to be added as an admin to all security systems, including the badge and lock system. VP meant to set an expiration date of the GM's account, but accidentally deleted it outright, which also removed any permissions he assigned, which included all current employees. Well, the team showed up the next morning to find that no badges worked. My friend told everyone to clock in as normal using their phone, but wait until the badges worked, because entering the building without an authorized badge went against security rules. Their shift started at 7 a.m., but VP wasn't online until 9 a.m. He freaked out when he saw that there were no machines running and then had to figure out how to add everyone back to the door badge system. Apparently, the VP isn't a real tech guy, so it was 10 a.m. before everyone was added back. They all sat in their cars and would badge in once the VP sent an email. There's just something that tickles my brain with malicious compliance stories like these. The ones where you have somebody who clearly has a stick up their butt with the whole "you can't hold the door open for anybody trying to badge in," and being able to make them feel so stupid when you can use that exact same sensibility against them. In the comments, a user named AvidLearnerBot wrote, "So they basically shut down the whole place over some stupid IT mistake? I'm confused. What exactly were they expecting would happen when they deleted everyone's access? Did they really think employees would just break in with guns blazing or something?" The OP of the post replied to that saying, "VP was inexperienced with the platform that manages the badges and locks and accidentally deleted an admin profile in a way that affects all permissions that the admin profile had created. Downstream issues. But yes, this is something that should have been handled by IT." Another user named Atomic Citron wrote, "So they got paid for doing nothing for 3 hours?" The OP replied, "Exactly. And they could have entered the building, but since their badges didn't work, then it would have been a violation of policy." The OP then added a small update. VP sent a facility-wide email to have at least one door propped open while people are in the building. Exiting GM pointed out that this violates so many security policies and that the email would be reviewed in an upcoming audit that would find it a major fault. Our next story is that in order? I'll preface this by saying, yes, there are people this stupid and bullheaded. Let me set the scene. The year is 1985, and I was an E4 sailor aboard a U.S. Navy support ship somewhere in the Pacific Ocean. When traveling at night, Navy ships would turn off all exterior lights, so as not to interfere with the bridge crew's night vision. There were dim red lights, but absolutely no white lights were permitted when running dark. Even the doors and hatches leading to the exterior had switches to automatically turn off all of a compartment's interior lights if the exterior door was opened. I was working with another E4 in a small compartment out on deck where the underway replenishment controls were. Probably painting something, I don't remember. It was a moonless night and pitch black. A really ticked off E6 from another department stumbled into the doorway, pointed, and told me to flip 3 switches on the bulkhead. These were the underway replenishment lights for night operations, similar to stadium lights. I told him, "I can't do that. Those are exterior lights." He said, "This isn't up for debate. Flip the freaking switches." I said, "Is that an order?" They reply, "If you don't do it, I'll write you up." So I said to the other E4, "You heard him," and flipped the switches. That was when I learned that Navy ships have very loud loudspeakers forward of the bridge. A voice boomed out, "Turn those freaking lights off now!" The E6 dived over me to turn off the lights. Within seconds, a master-at-arms showed up to escort the E6 to talk to the duty officer. I don't remember for sure, but I think he got captain's mast for that. Just following orders. Edit. Captain's mast is non-judicial punishment. At sea, the captain has complete authority. It's like a trial where the captain reads the charges, gives the accused an opportunity to speak, and decides on a punishment. Usually reduction in rank, extra duty, etc. Everyone I knew that got it, it was for smoking weed or coke. Meth was just getting popular in SoCal. So, okay, didn't expect that ending there. You know, I really enjoyed learning about the dynamics of how lights on a Navy ship work at night, at least at this time frame. But didn't expect to learn that apparently meth on a Navy ship is so popular that OP had to add in a clarification at the very end that meth at the time was just starting to get popular. You know, for all the people who heard most people in Captain's Mast were there for drugs, immediately jumping to the obvious assumption that it must have been meth. In the comments on the post, a user named Slider65 wrote, I used to stand watch topside and on the bridge while underway, and the darkened ship rules had little to do with the bridge crew's night vision. It is amazing how far away you can see a ship's lights with the naked eye at night. Heck, you can see the glow of someone taking a drag from a cigarette on another ship from miles away. We could tell you from the lights alone what type of ship we were seeing. The OP replied to that, we were an ammo ship, floating target, and did the dark running thing a lot. Another user named PhD2K1 wrote, what was the reason given by the E6 for turning on the lights? The OP replied, he thought they were for something else and it not being my workspace, he assumed I didn't know what I was talking about. Our next story is, micromanagement isn't cheap. I'm an IT consultant. Customers pay my employer for me, or my colleagues, to work on their IT systems. It's not cheap. Around $1,500 per day, but we're good at what we do. We bill by the day, which should technically be an 8-hour shift dedicated to a single customer. Though in reality, things are kinda fluid. I might need to email or have a quick meeting with another customer during the day and make the time up elsewhere, etc. All of my customers understand this, and they trust me to get their work done and not rip them off. In 8 years, I've never had a complaint. I was midway through an 18-month project with a long-term client. We billed them 2 days a week, which pretty much lined up with the work I was doing for them. The project was progressing nicely, and everyone was happy. Then, they hired a new project manager. From the get-go, he was a nightmare and clearly wanted to throw his authority around / show off for his new bosses. He wanted to micromanage all my work, putting in twice daily meetings, constant emails, the works. After a couple of weeks, he decided they weren't getting their money's worth and demanded a detailed breakdown of exactly how my time was being used. Fine by me. I started tracking every single minute. Meetings he scheduled, emails he sent, time spent responding, time spent logging all of this. The bill nearly doubled. His director, who I had a good relationship with, called me directly to ask why costs had suddenly spiked. I explained that I was just following the new PM's request for detailed time tracking and regular updates. About 30 minutes later, we got an email saying that we could go back to the previous arrangement and that the new guy had been reallocated to another project. A few weeks later, I noticed his account had been disabled. So, I think the important thing here is they took the guy off of the job, because I feel like it becomes infinitely more possible and more ideal for somebody in OP's position if they still had to deal with this absolute jerk to say, well, you know what? The new system kind of works for me. I sure don't mind working for this new guy like this and spiking the costs. But I get that OP wouldn't want to burn bridges with someone that they said they have a good relationship with, especially when it's an 18-month project. In the comments, a user named Jin wrote, it seems a little insane that tracking would double the bill. Feels like you're not charging enough. Ha! The OP replied, it was more him constantly putting in catch-up meetings and sending giant AI-generated emails asking for updates on things. Though, to be fair, we probably weren't billing them enough to start with. They're a good customer, and we have a pretty good relationship. Usually. Our next story is elevator races. While not completely malicious, it's close enough that it won't be out of place here, and I'm sure you'll all get a chuckle. A few years back, I worked at an IT company, and one day, the boss decides to buy everyone lunch. So myself, M, and one of the other guys and girl from the office head up to pick up the order of 20-odd burgers and chips, etc. When we get back to the office building, we are on the 7th floor and there are 2 elevators, both of which are available in the lobby. She says to me, "Race you up," to which I reply, "What are you, a child?" The 3 of us get into one of the elevators. I quickly hit the buttons for every floor and jump out before the doors shut. I beat them up there by a few minutes and I'm giving the boss his burger. Their elevator opens and she calls me a D-head from across the office. Boss is like, "What the heck?" And I told him what happened and he peed himself laughing. So I just have to admit, I love the playfulness here. I feel like it's exactly the kind of thing that I would do. You try to give off that Oscar-level performance where you're like, "What are you, a kid? I'm tired, underpaid, I've got things to do when I get back home. I'm not trying to have some dumb elevator race so I can hurry up and be the first person to give boss his burger." And then I promptly mash all the buttons and run off, looking like Danhausen making a sprint for the back. In the comments, I would be remiss if we didn't have one comment from Coder Joe 1 where they wrote, "I had a travel job where I often stayed in the same hotel as my coworkers. One night, after several drinks with the boss, we all got on the elevator and razzed him about getting a room on a low floor, while the rest of us were up on the top level. When the door opened for his floor, he ripped a loud fart, ran his hand down the wall of buttons, and walked out laughing." The OP of the post replied, "Another time, one of the guys who shared a fishbowl office with one other farted so bad the other guy ran out. I told my supervisor farting guy wanted to see him, and into the office he went. Took them a few minutes to work out my scheme." Our next story is malicious compliance from a maintenance worker. I worked for a large corporation as a shift manager in our data center, so I had to review tickets from the prior shift. We had a ticketing system most corporations would be used to, but our night maintenance worker that handled stopped-up toilets and bulb replacements, this was something he didn't use until new management said he needed to track his work in our ticketing system. This didn't sit well with him, but he complied. Granted, this was several years ago, so I don't have the exact verbiage, but the entry stuck with me because they were so funny. Entry number 1 asked to remove rabbits from flower garden at main entrance. Took pellet gun, shot 6 times, hit 1, took pellet gun back to shop, re-sighted gun, shot 4 times, hit 3. Entry number 2 asked to unclog a toilet in the women's bathroom on the 4th floor. Found what looked to be like several pounds of turds and 1.5 rolls of toilet paper. Had to punch that doggy several times before it cleared. Entry number 3 asked to replace light bulb above receptionist desk. Evidently not bright enough for her to fix her makeup. Added 2 200-watt bulbs. Should be bright enough for her to see herself now. I stopped seeing entries after about a month. Next time I saw him, I asked him why I wasn't seeing any more entries from him. He told me they took his access to the ticketing system away, with a big smile. So my first thought when hearing this was, wouldn't the guy normally have gotten in trouble for misuse of the ticketing system? But then I realized this guy must be like a rock star maintenance worker for them, who up until this point had been quietly and efficiently getting rid of the giant massive dung piles that appear in the women's bathroom, or fixed the light bulbs for the receptionist's vanity. Last thing you would want to have to do is now suddenly have to replace a rockstar maintenance worker just because they didn't want to have to deal with creating a ticket every time they have to fix a clog in the bathroom. But to be fair, I do feel like what the maintenance worker did was a great way to make adding things to the ticketing system a fun thing. Before the ticketing system, you were just some maintenance worker, but now you get to try out some new material as a comedian on the side. I honestly wonder how much productivity they lost just by inspiring him to have to come up with some witty comment to attach to every ticket. In the comments, a user named Forsaken Form wrote, "What a guy." The OP replied, "It got to where I would sign in, and if he made an entry overnight, I would announce, 'David has a new entry,' so everyone could go into the ticketing system and read them." Another user named Ready Competition wrote, "It must have been one of his late entries that finally led to him being removed. I wonder what the problem was and which executive the ticket was about." The OP replied, "That very well could be. When I noticed I hadn't seen an entry for him in a while, I went back to look at his old tickets. I'd kept note of the ticket numbers so I could get a laugh, and they were all gone. Either he did as you said, or he had just flown under the radar long enough before someone high up enough actually read his tickets. Our next story is, my brother-in-law told me to stop asking where everything goes in his house and just use common sense. My sister and her husband bought a house last fall, and ever since then, visiting them has felt like walking into a very nice Airbnb run by one irritated man. He has a rule for everything, but only after you break it. Shoes by the bench, except not that side of the bench because that side is for the dog leash. Mugs in the blue cabinet, except not the front half because those are for guests. Dish towels on the oven handle, except one of them is decorative, somehow. Last weekend, I was there helping my sister paint the spare room, and by noon, I had already been corrected 4 times for putting things in the wrong place. When I asked where he wanted the paint tray washed, he sighed and said, "You don't need a guided tour every 10 minutes. Just use common sense and act like you live here." So I said okay. I really did say it nicely because at that point I was getting annoyed too. So I acted like I lived there. I rinsed the tray in the big utility sink, used the roll of paper towel under it, put the dog food scoop back in the bin with the food, and stacked the dried dishes in the cabinet that was literally next to the sink. About 20 minutes later, he came downstairs looking like his soul had left his body. The paper towels were apparently for garage spills only. The scoop cannot touch the food because of germs, even though it lives in the food bin. And the cabinet I used was not for plates, it was for serving pieces. My sister started laughing so hard, she had to sit on the stairs. He said I was being smart with him, and I told him no, I was using common sense and acting like I lived there. Now, there are labels inside half the kitchen, which honestly seems definitely easier for everybody. So, would I be the only one that remembers in the cartoon Ed, Edd n Eddy what Double D's house looked like? If you don't, the best way to describe it is, and it's a cartoon, but the character Double D had a label maker and wrote and put a label on everything. I would like to imagine that this guy's house looked something like that. Could you imagine walking into this house and there's a label on the oven that says, "Dish towels here except for the one decorative one," labels on the cabinets saying what you can and can't use for certain things? In the comments, a user named Tacos Are Justice wrote, "Is your sister okay? This guy sounds miserable to live with." VOP replied, "She says he's easier if you never touch anything." Our next story is clocking in. Used to work for a business office some ages ago. You clocked in by swiping a card on a time clock in the elevator lobby. Swipe out or in for lunch, etc. Pretty simple. You were paid in 3-minute increments, and so some people would come up a bit short or long, with OT, by the end of the week. The reader machines took ages to register you, so you had to stand there to be 100% certain you were clocked in or out. There could be very long queues. If you got more than an hour of OT, you might get a talking to, but most of the time, nobody said anything. Managers were also pretty chill about letting you come in whenever, as long as you were at your desk during hours where they let you call patients. Then, one day this mandate comes out, absolutely no overtime without VP approval. For the most part, nothing bad happens, except now managers have to be on your case if you're clocking in early and out late and racking 30+ minutes of overtime on any check. After a few months of people being no more particular about clocking in and out, a new directive comes down the pipe. No schedule changes whatsoever, everyone is assigned a schedule and will stick to it for life. You must clock in between 6 minutes before your start, no later than 3 minutes after. Flip that on the way out. 3 minutes early, up to 6 minutes late. About 30 people started at 9 a.m., so they would be queued at the punch clocks beginning at 8:54, and 2 to 3 of them would be tardy. I was one of the rare few that was allowed to be in at an abnormal time, 7:30, and didn't have to queue to punch in and out. I know math, and so do you. We've all got time to maliciously comply. 12 extra minutes, 4 days a week, is 48 minutes. Then clocking in 6 minutes early on Friday gets you up to 54 minutes. Every Friday around 10 in the morning for almost 3 years, my manager walks over and orders me to clock out an hour early so that I will not get overtime. Every Friday she tells me, "You really can't be doing this." And every Friday, I ask her if there's a new company policy, which always garners a sigh as she walked away. The OP wasn't doing anything wrong. I mean, they can come up and say to OP, "You really can't be doing this," all they want till they're blue in the face, but unless you actually enforce it and make it clear to OP that they can't be doing this, sure seems like OP really can. This next story is, Grill Tyrant tried to hog the spotlight, so I smoked him out with a sneaky twist. So last summer, I'm at this neighborhood barbecue. Sun's out, beers are cold, and I'm ready to flex my smoked ribs game. Think tender, smoky perfection that steals the show. It's a chill potluck vibe, but then this dude, let's call him Karen, crowns himself grill overlord and lays down the law like he's guarding the holy flame. "No one uses the grill but me," he says, flipping burgers like he's on a cooking show. "One dish at a time. Mine first, then maybe you get a shot." I'm standing there, cooler in hand like, "Bro, it's a huge grill. Can't I just toss my ribs on the side? They need time." "Nope, one at a time. My rules." He's smirking, so I bite my tongue. "All right, Karen, let's see how this cooks." He does his burger thing, taking forever, while my ribs chill in their marinade. Crowd's eating, but I'm plotting. His turn's done. He waves me in. "Go ahead." Here's where I get petty. And a little sneaky. I had smoked the ribs at home for a couple hours that morning, low and slow, 3-2-1 style, but just the first stretch. Wrapped them tight, brought them ready to finish, not fully pre-cooked, just prepped to win. I fire up the grill, slide the ribs on, and sneak a foil tray of applewood chips in the corner. Smoke rolls out, thick, sweet, pure temptation. Karen's over there chomping his burger when heads start turning. What's that smell? People wander over, noses up, drooling already. I'm brushing sauce all chill. Just ribs. Takes a bit, hope that's cool. His burgers? Yesterday's news. The mob's around me now begging for a taste. The Karen storms up. "You're smoking out my grill." I reply, "One dish at a time, right? I'm just following orders." I flip a rib, smoke curling like a victory flag. He tries to elbow in. "Let me cook." I say, "Nah, my turn's still going. Your rule." I stretch it, tending the ribs, tweaking the chips, chatting up the crowd about low and slow magic. Takes over an hour, and by then, Karen's reign is ash. Everyone's piling ribs, raving while his burger tray sits there, sad and cold. Night ends, host slaps my shoulder and says, "Dude, you own the grill next time." I reply, "Say less." Karen thought that he'd rule the barbecue, but I smoked him out with a half-cooked plan and a whole lot of petty. Prep the ribs early? Sure. Worth it to watch him choke on his own rule? Heck yeah. So, I gotta be honest, here's the thing that I feel about OP's overly dramatized rib malicious compliance story. OP said that it took them over an hour even though they prepped the ribs beforehand. If I'm at this potluck thing, and the only thing that came off of the grill was the guy's burgers, after an hour, sure, OP's ribs kind of have to be all the rage because nothing else came off of that grill for an hour. OP's writing like, "Oh, his burgers were so sad and cold." Yeah, because it had been an hour. Our next story is, my job told us they would pay more if an employee became bilingual. Felly, dysgais Gymraeg. I had a job that had a standing policy that if you could speak at least 2 languages, you got a 10% raise. I've always been a natural at languages, but I don't speak any of them fluently. Usually just get enough to get into trouble. At a previous job, I was disciplined for telling a supervisor that only ever addressed me in Spanish to please speak English in German. She wrote me up for speaking a language that she didn't understand and was completely oblivious to the irony. But I got a job I liked and saw that pay incentive because we only had so many bilingual employees in a job that frequently requires you to go to job sites where English is not spoken. Well, I wanted to learn the language of my ancestors, so I picked up a Welsh class online, and while I didn't become fluent, I spoke enough to carry on a rudimentary conversation, which would be great if anybody here actually spoke Welsh. But I then went to HR to see if I qualified for the pay raise. You had to go talk to someone and management, and they would test your proficiency. I proceeded to tell them in Welsh that I could speak it and that my family came from Wales in 1745. The manager then told me that the policy meant Spanish. But, as the policy didn't specify Spanish and just said bilingual, they honored the policy, gave me my raise, and then changed the policy immediately after that. I haven't ever had to use Welsh at work, but they have had me translate for new hires who couldn't understand some of our clients who speak with a very accented Cajun and Scottish accents. Well, y'all. So, just first off, for anybody that might be curious, the Welsh in the title of the story just means, so I learned Welsh. Meaning the title is, my job told us they would pay more if an employee became bilingual, so I learned Welsh. Or, Felly dysgais Gymraeg. At the very end of the post, the OP wrote, Hwyl y'all, which just means, bye y'all. The y'all is in English. In the comments, a user named Bag of Boards wrote, OP, are you in the petrochemical industry? I've lived in South Louisiana for 43 years. That accent is something. The OP replied, I'm adjacent to it. We do work with a lot of petrochemical companies on the Gulf Coast, and the warehouse manager of one of them over on Barber's Cut had an accent so thick it was legend. I don't think the guy pronounced half the letters in any word. Another user named Marvchuck wrote, telling your manager to please speak English in German is freaking hilarious. The OP replied, Ich sprechen Spanish nicht. Sprechen Sie English bitte? I tried my best. It means I don't speak Spanish, please speak English. But with that being said, now I'm gonna do the entire outro in German. Just kidding, because I can't speak German and that would be very hard to do. But if you want to check out another malicious compliance video, it wouldn't be very hard to do that. You just gotta click the video on the left of the screen right now. Or if you missed my latest video, you can check that out on the right of the screen. That said, I'll see you all next time mit weiteren Geschichten.